What's up everybody, my name's Stephanie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a February wrap-up video with a few January honorable mentions. I read 9 books in January and 5 books in February, and if I did the videos together it'd be like 25 minutes long, and I didn't want to do that, but if you are interested in what I read, all the books I read in January, comment down below and I could do a video for you of that. But I just wanted to do a February one, and I'm going to put in a couple of books from January that I did really enjoy. The first one was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is not a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, but this is an origin story of how the Queen of Hearts became the woman we all know and love to hate. This follows Catherine, or Kath, and her transformation of a girl who wanted nothing more in life to become a baker to the queen who likes to cut off people's heads. I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved being back in the world of Wonderland. It's one of my favorite places to read about. I love all the stories. I love all the retellings of Alice in Wonderland. It says all of our favorite characters in it. The Mad Hatter, the White Rabbit, the March Hare, the Caterpillar. And I just loved it. There's some characters in here that are new. Some that if you read this you'll absolutely fall in love with. I was hooked from the beginning. I felt every emotion that Kath was feeling in this book. Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I can't say enough about it. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. That's Heartless by Marissa Meyer, and I cannot wait to read some of the other books by her. Another book I read in January that I really enjoyed was Hunted by Megan Spooner. This is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. It follows Yeva and her family. They live in a small village until tragedy strikes and they are forced to go move into her father's hunting cabin in the woods. And one night her father goes missing and Yeva has to go find him, even though her sisters asked her not to. And she comes across a beast that she blames and she thinks killed her father, and he needs a hunter to help him break the curse that he's under, and it just tells the story of those two. I loved this. I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's a fairy tale within a fairy tale, which I really enjoy. I loved, one of my favorite things about this book is the dynamic between Yeva and her 2 sisters. It's wonderful, it's heartwarming. I loved that relationship. I love the transformation of the characters from the beginning to the end. In between chapters there's these little tidbits, like almost diary entries from the Beast. And it's really fun to see how he transforms via his diary entries from the beginning to the end. I loved this. Again, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend it. That was Hunted by Megan Spooner. Okay, now in February, the first book I read was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book follows Blue, who is the daughter of a psychic, but she has no psychic abilities of her own. She is what they refer to as a battery, and she kind of enhances the psychic abilities of those around her. And then it also follows these 4 boys, the Raven Boys. They are from a prestigious school, all-boys school, and they each have their own personalities. You've got Gansey, who is the leader of the pack, and he is an adventurer. He really loves and he's obsessed with trying to find this forgotten king, I guess. I don't know how else to put that. And this is just a story about how his life, these boys' lives, and Blue's kind of intersect and they go on this adventure together. I loved this story. I loved all of the boys. Like I said, you've got Gansey, and then you have Adam, who has his own personal problems that you'll learn about, and he's not rich like the other ones. He's at that school on a scholarship, and he's worked really hard to get there. You've got Ronan, who's the bad boy of the group. He's very angsty and very fun, actually. There's a part in there that showed some softness to him, and I really enjoyed it. And then you have Noah, who is kind of, it says that he's kind of dirty looking, but his room is like immaculate, like he's never in there. He always seems to pop up unexpectedly, and by the end of the book, he was actually one of my favorite characters. I loved him. So yes, The Raven Boys, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I cannot wait to read the rest and see what happens with Gansey and the boys. Or Gansey and Blue and the boys. Okay, the next book I read was Scabbers the Stars by Tara Sim. I did get this in my Crate box. This is supposed to be a retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo, which I would say is loosely based off the Count of Monte Cristo. But this follows a girl who starts out on a debtor ship, and her time is almost up. She's got like a week or something left to go, and then she saves a man who's drowning after her captain told them to let him die, and he adds more time to her debt. And because of the treatment, the way he treats her and the other children on the ship, she wants revenge. And she escapes, and the guy who she saved escapes too, and he promises her riches and revenge. So he turns her into a high society woman, and she seeks revenge on the captain, and she seeks revenge on the man who's responsible for putting her on the debtor ship to begin with. And then you have every other chapter is from the perspective of a boy named Ko, who is a high society member, and he has squandered his riches away on frivolity, like partying and gambling. And one day his sister comes down sick, and the only way to treat her is to have the money to get this, not cure, but this medicine. And he finds out that they are actually broke. And he's finding it really hard not to go back to that life to help save his sister. And then he meets this mysterious woman who just pops up out of nowhere. And they kind of use each other to gain their own ends. And I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. And it was kind of slow at the beginning, but then it picked up, and it made me interested enough to find out what happens in the next one. Scabbers the Stars by Tara Sim. The next book I read, get up here, was called The Wild by Jack London. I saw an ad for the movie while my husband and I went to go see Star Wars, and I figured if I was going to go see that movie, I'm going to have to read the book first. So I picked this up and I read it. So this book, if you don't know, it follows a dog. I think his name was Bo. Pretty sure. Or Buck, sorry. It follows Buck, a dog. And he lives a life of luxury until one night he is stolen away and he is sold into the sled dog business. And this just follows his transformation from a tame dog, to an untamed wild dog who follows his instincts. And this was a really fun read. I haven't ever really read a book out of the perspective of an animal before, besides like Charlotte's Web. But I really enjoyed that. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. There is some animal abuse in this, and it's hard to read those parts. That's what took it down for me, but this is definitely a must-read. It is a classic. It was really great. 4 out of 5 stars. Probably more 4.5 out of 5 stars. But yeah, that was Call of the Wild from Jack London. The next book I read was Dangerous Alliance by Janika Cohen. And this book is about Vicky. And she loves Jane Austen books, and she likens her life to a Jane Austen novel. And any situation that she comes across in life, her motto is WW insert Jane Austen heroine's name do. So, like, what would Emily Bennett, or what would Elizabeth Bennet do? What would Emma do? That sort of thing. But this follows Vicky, and tragedy strikes her sister, and it's up to Vicky to save her family and her livelihood. So she needs to go into society, and this is her story of going into society and meeting some suitors, some really charming ones, some not so charming ones, and it was fun to read about her, and it was kind of also heartbreaking. Trigger warning, there is some talk of abuse and some talk of would-be rape in here, so just trigger warning for that if that bothers you. There's no explicit scenes like that, but it does mention it. I did really like this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, I believe. I love Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen's books. So to read another book that's kind of based off of her works was really fun. And it was good to get out of my own box of YA fantasy and to read a little bit of like YA romance contemporary, so that was fun. I also listened to Alice in Wonderland on audiobook while I was walking my dog, so I gave that out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5 stars, so I probably don't have to tell you what that's about. And then the last book I read, which, full disclosure, I started it in February and I didn't finish it till last night, so technically this is also a March read. But I read Crowd of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. Last month I decided that I was going to read one book out of the Throne of Glass series a month. And the first month I read Throne of Glass, and this month, obviously, I went to Crown of Midnight, I'm sorry. So this follows Selena Sardothien and her life after becoming the King's Champion. Her life in the castle, and her life doing the King's bidding, and her relationship with Dorian and Kale. And I just love this story. I love Selena Sardothien. She's one of my favorite heroines. She's not afraid to be herself. She's kick butt. She's just all around amazing. I love her. She's sassy. 5 out of 5 stars from me. So those are the books that I read in January, and in a couple of books I read in January, and some books I read in February. My favorite book in February, besides Crown at Midnight, since I knew I was going to love that anyway because I'd read it before, was definitely The Raven Boys. It was such a fun read, and it was so cool, and I can't wait to read the next one in the series. I think there's 4 or 5, I might be wrong about that, in that series. Excuse me. And I already told you Heartless was definitely my favorite story to read in January. I highly recommend that. If you haven't read it yet. I also highly recommend The Raven Boys and Hunted, and the Throne of Glass series if you haven't read them. The rest of them were alright. They're like 4 stars. But yeah. Those are the books I read in February, and a couple of honorable mentions from January. Comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of them. Comment down below and tell me any of those that you're interested in reading if you haven't done so. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.